Welcome to RaceTalk TV, a show about local racing, past and present, with our hosts Bill Gritt and Bobby Potts. This is the Nostalgia Show, and now from Access TV in Salina, Kansas, it's RaceTalk Part 2. Special thanks to Mom Construction, Salina Speedway, Flatlands Media, DJ Mean Dean, Karen Gebhardt for getting the pizza, the Potts family for providing refreshments, Access TV for use of their studio. Brought to you by Mom Construction, Lindsborg, Kansas. Over 50 years of service, offering road building, site grading, pavement removal, laser GPS grade control. Learn more at www.momco.com or call 785-227-5059. Of course, our friends at Salina Speedway, Friday Night Racing. Come out there and visit with them. They're great folks. Thanks for the support. Welcome back to RaceTalk TV on Salina Access. Again, putting this show together. It's our nostalgia show, and Bobby put together a great show tonight, as he always does. And of course, our guests have been Mike Hughes, Jack Petty, Sam Brittendall, Jerry Phillips, and Mel Potts. And these guys have raced around for years and years, and they have tons of stories to tell. And if we could get them to talk about all of them, we'd be here all night. But
Jack and I could take up most of that.
Yeah.
One thing about it, me and Jack have won more races since we quit than we did when we was racing. If anybody wants to know.
You know, when I remember one year you were at, when you were talking about Belleville, you'd be in there, and this was when you had the Mustang, I believe, and you guys come up with like a 429-inch big block Ford or something like that.
Yeah.
Ended up being a little heavy in the front, didn't it?
If I remember, corrected it did.
I was going to say, if I remember,
the track,
if I remember right, yeah, the front end dug in and the motor ended up coming out of the hood.
Mel Potts and I started on the front row in the feature, and I took off, and I always had to drive everything as hard as it could go to get anywhere. And so just shortly, I come up behind a lapped car, and it hadn't run only about 3 laps, I think.
it wasn't very many.
And the car that I was coming up behind was running down low, so I was going to pass him on the outside, and I started around on the outside, and when I did, come right up into me, and I ran over his right front wheel and went up in the air and took a nosedive, and the engine wound up, pushed up almost through the hood, and I don't know how many pounds of mud the racetrack was up under.
It broke the motor mounts.
Yeah, and I was mad, and the Chrysler dealer up there, his son was he was 16 years old, 16 or 16 he said, and he was on the record that was right where the wreck happened, and he come over he was the first one over there to see if I was all right. Well, I didn't realize that, but I stuck my short hand, these stubs, into the hail screen, and there's blood running off my hand, and I didn't even know that. And he come over to see if I was all right, and he looked down, and of course I was cussing, I was mad, and he looked down, seen I didn't have any fingers and blood running off. He thought I cut my fingers off.
Oh my.
He said he got passed out.
Yeah.
That was one time I should have been driving quite as hard. But the reason the guy, he came over and apologized, the reason he came up, he thought I was going, he heard me and he thought I was going under him, and he moved up to get out of the way. Well, I was already around him on the outside.
Dad, you got to tell a story about the back, I don't know what year it was, when Roland Crocker was still racing and you were just getting started.
No.
And how big a guy Roland was.
That was out at Yahoo Speedway, and I had a big motor. I thought, but I was learning. I drove those hobos for a while over at Junction and Yahoo, and then we got that jalopy. But yeah, Roland Crocker and I was coming out of number 2 turn, I think it was out there. And he was trying to crowd me up, and I didn't crowd. I just kept going straight ahead, and it took his right front wheel off. We got hooked up, and he had like a sled runner under the right front axle on that straight axle car. And I went on, and he went on, and he parked on the,
Hey, Bob.
oh, look at there.
Yep.
He parked on the front straightaway and waited for me to come around, and but he couldn't quite catch up because of that wheel not being on the front of his car.
Yeah.
But anyway, afterwards, he met me in the pits, and I was kind of standing in a hole, and he was standing on a hill. He was about 9 foot tall. I was saying, "Yes, sir, I won't do it anymore." And now I was driving down Broadway one day, and he pulled up beside me and pointed me to pull over. And I thought, ooh, should I or not? And I did, and we stopped and talked. He said, "Come on, I'll buy you a beer." It was all for that.
So everything was cool, huh?
Yeah.
You know,
I'd like to tell you one about Crocker.
Okay.
We called him Slim.
Yep.
He was, truthfully, he was about, I'd say 6'6" anyway. And I think his hands hung down around his knees.
Yeah.
And 3 different times I drove a car that was set up for him, and they had the 32 Ford coupe, and they had to put a cushion under me and a cushion behind me, and it had the truck steering on it with the Pittman lengthened to make it quicker steering, and they had to take wooden blocks to the pedals for me to reach them. And I had to reach out as far as I could reach to get a hold of the steering wheel. And I'll tell you, after 20 laps like that, my
Oh
heart
my
was about
gosh.
ready to drop off. And I drove that car 3 different times when he couldn't make it.
now, Mel, when I first moved to Salina, if I remember this story correctly, not only did you race on the racetrack, you also kind of raced around town a little bit too, didn't you?
Ooh. Yeah,
Didn't you?
probably.
If I remember right, you had to take a driving course. Get your license.
Probably. Huh?
Alzheimer's is sitting
Yeah,
there.
he doesn't want
Yeah,
to remember. How many? You got your fair share of tickets, didn't you?
Oh, I suppose, yeah. Here in Salina?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, something that slips my mind.
I'm sure it does now.
Well, I do remember.
Come on. I got him on the spot. He knows it.
Oh, look at there. I do remember having a 63 Ford that was hot stuff. It was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
390, 4-speed.
Run pretty good, didn't it?
Some guy pulled up beside me in a hot rod, really a hot rod. I mean, it was rocking when it wouldn't even sit still. It wanted to go. And he said, he pointed, so we were on south part of Santa Fe. So I said, yeah, I'll go with you. So man, I'm going through the gears and just flying down Santa Fe, and I look back, that guy never even left.
He was racing down Santa Fe in the old Ford van too, and my brother and I were in lawn chairs in the back, and we ended up smashed up again. He didn't tell us he was going to take off, and we weren't hanging on. We ended up smashed up against the back door one time. Yeah. So, yeah.
Mike, you know, you've been kind of quiet here for a little bit. We've been talking about these guys racing stuff. Now, you've called races for a long time. Surely you've called some races that these guys participated in.
Afraid so.
Any one stick out in your mind?
I don't think off the top of my head. I know Sammy and Shelby used to run at Smith Center some, and I remember one night, and I'm pretty sure Sammy was there the day, but back then, in them 6-cylinder classes, you know, they,
Now wait, Jerry still drives a 6-cylinder, so it wasn't back then.
okay. Yeah, but he's the young gun here, so we can talk all we want
His is a
about that.
V6.
Oh, V6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
These were all
V6,
inline sixes.
Hudson's, which Jack could probably attest to this. Hudson's were, a lot of guys ran Hudson's because they were just like Sherman tanks. I mean, you know, it was steel bodies. They could beat on everybody all night long. And Bob Martin and Hoxie had one, and then we had a couple of sky blue cars come in one day, and it was 51 and 51X. And God, these guys were fast, and guys like Sammy and them, they couldn't even keep up. And I know they started dead last in the feature and went 1-2, and when it was all said and done, Van Gimmel was the one in the 51, and Curly Hill was in the 51X.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was kind of interesting and kind of fun. But yeah, and you know, I just remember, I mean, these guys ran a lot when I was just so kind of going, and I really got into the, I mean, I was announcing some, but these guys, like Mel and them guys said, they ran a lot more down here around Salina and Junction City, and I forgot about Yahoo till Mel said something about it a little bit ago. But it was always fun to go watch, and I can remember everybody. I mean, Jack, he's always got that grin on his face, and you don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. Never know what
Shelby
he's
always
up
had
to.
his straw cowboy hat on, you know, and was always telling tall tales. And so, once in a while, I got to call a few races with these guys, but most of them, I didn't have the chance out western Kansas to call that many. Now, Jerry's a different story, but that's Jerry. So,
You know, you guys, a name that if he wouldn't have lived so far away, I would have loved to have had him here, because I know Sam and Jack and Dad, I know you guys raced with him, but J.D. Martin
Oh,
out in
yeah.
Dodge City. I know, Dad, you got some stories to tell about J.D.
Oh, yeah.
The night.
He'd wreck me, and then we'd go to his shop and fix my car.
Yeah.
Then we, one time they went on strike out there for more money, and me and Butch Brock and 3 other guys, 5 cars showed up, and we went ahead and raced, and 2 of the guys didn't make it. They sat in the pit, so 3 of us put on a show the best way we could. And I'll never forget, what was his name?
It was Jack Merrick, wasn't it? Jack Merrick.
Merrick, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack Murray.
Yeah.
He came out and said, "How do you boys want to split the money? Where I'm paying $800. And I said, "Well, why don't you give each one of us a run 200 and give them 2 guys each 100. Boy, they were tickled to death sitting in the pit. They made $100 a piece and didn't have to run. But I liked it out there at Dodge. That was a fun place to run. But we were in a little bit of trouble that night when we went home. We didn't dare stop too long. There was a lot of people kind of crowding around. They wanted to do something about it because we went past their picket lines and went ahead and raced. And
couldn't buy any parts at the salvage yard after that
I was
either.
going to say, we had trouble one time and needed some parts. Went to get them, and guys wouldn't sell them to us because
They remembered.
Yeah, they
remembered what
remember.
we done. But it worked out.
Yep.
I remember after JD got out, JD was one of the first ones that started a computer program
That's right.
for races.
That's
And,
right.
You know, that was the first program that they started with. And
Yep.
he came to a lot of the races and get everything set up on the, I remember that at Joaquin.
That's right.
Is that his son that still races in the M15? Or is that a grandson?
Yeah, his son.
Son?
Yep. Mike.
Yep,
Yep.
still races.
Yep.
JD and I talk about that time at the fairgrounds. I lost the right rear wheel and flipped the car. We was about as high as the wall when we were upside down. I don't know how many times we turned over, but JD had drove in under me and backed out of it, and he got a little ding in the right-hand side of his top on his car. That's how close he come. That was an experience.
Gets dark and quiet when you're upside down. doesn't it?
You know, I had no idea how many times. I thought I just turned over once, but I guess it was several.
You know,
You're right. It's quiet, isn't it?
Yep.
It's different.
Sam, back in the quarter mile days over at Hutchison, probably don't get much funner than little short tracks like that, did it?
And J Hill, Jackson City.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, it was good old days.
Jack, I know you guys, both of you ran over there at the little quarter mile. They'd get a lot of cars over there on
Yeah.
that
Oh,
on that little track. They put
Yeah, it
on
was
some
a
good
lot of fun.
races.
we had a lot of fun over there. That was
When name some of the guys, I know Henry Ellington
Dick
ran,
Hendershot.
Dick Hendershot,
Yep.
and yep.
Jack and Jack knows the story a little better than I do, but Jack and Hendershot and me and Henry Ellington it was the last night of the season. We were running for the championship. I already had it made, and I'm running fourth, I think. I don't know, but anyway,
Well, better let me tell you.
yeah,
Which one? Who remembers it better?
yeah, he was up front. He won it that one.
They had 1 point per position, and this was a trophy dash. They paid points in the trophy dash, and Mel was leading the trophy dash, and Hendershot was running second, and they were staying. Hendershot was staying side by side, or right, between where Mel was running and Hendershot was running. I couldn't get around him, and that's the way Hendershot planned it. And then he was going to pass Mel going down the backstretch and win the trophy dash. Well, we got the white flag and come out of number 2 turn, and Mel was driving pretty hard, and he got it crossed up a little bit coming out of number 2, and Henry Ellington had to nail it to keep from running into him, and I went around both of them on the outside, and then I won the feature, and I won the season points championship, and that's the only time I was in the lead in points. That's
Yeah,
that year.
three of us
Yeah.
switched
Yeah.
positions on the last night.
Wow.
And that's the only time I was in the lead was that night. Thank you, Mel.
Henry said, "You know, boy, you didn't have to do that." I guess I'd spun him out, basically. I didn't mean to.
Well,
It was running
neither
close.
one of you actually spun out.
Well, yeah, we got out of shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That ain't you didn't have the transmission in there that you borrowed
That
from
just-
him,
that
did
just brought that up,
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
I borrowed a tranny from Henry one night. We were running in second gear, and somebody said he's got one that's just laying there by his car. Go ask him, so I did. We put it in, and gee, every time I'd get on the gas, it'd jump out of gear. So here I am driving with one hand and trying to hold it in gear, and I don't remember how good I'd done that night, but I took the tranny back and give it back to Henry, and I said, "Henry," I said, "you know, that thing slips out of second." "Oh yeah, I know it." He said, "That's my loaner." I said, "Well, how come he didn't tell me?" He said, "You didn't ask."
Henry Ellington was something else.
He was.
His car number was 36.
Mhm.
And the reason his car number was 36, that's how old he was when he started racing.
Oh, man,
Really?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's reading.
Was he-
You know, he did win the Nationals once.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was he really a welder, or did he just wear that welding
He
hat?
had a mechanic shop in South Hutch.
Okay, and he always wore that little beanie thing.
Yeah, he always wore that hat.
Yeah.
He'd go to tell you something, he'd come up and put his arm around you and say, "Boy,"
Yeah,
that's how he started his conversation, no matter
Boy.
what he's gonna tell you.
I remember he sat in the back seat, and his car had a floorboard with expanded metal.
Right.
That was it. You could see the track going
Really?
right underneath you.
Wow.
Yeah, I,
Weight didn't matter back then. I mean, that's when they did really start. You sat in the back seat.
yeah,
You had exhaust pipes running on both sides of your
yeah,
ears.
right along there on both sides.
What motors did you guys run back then?
I normally ran the smallest engine on the racetrack.
Yeah, you did. It was a 302 Ford, wasn't it?
Started out with a 289 Ford engine, and then we went to a big engine, went to 302.
302?
And we was running against, depending on where we ran, the reels were either 355 cubic inches or 364, and we ran the 302 Ford Boss. We turned around 1,000 RPM more than the Chevrolets did.
And how things changed from that day to later on? You guys were buying motors from Robert Yates,
Yeah.
right?
No,
Oh, wasn't
You
Yates?
didn't?
no.
Or is that when Shelby was driving? Was Shelby
it
driving
was from,
Yeah, it wasn't Yates, but it was down there.
Home and Moody?
Home
yeah.
and Moody.
Home and Moody.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Yep,
No.
yep.
Did you ever have one of
The
them?
302, the 302 that we ran was built in Denver.
In Denver?
Yeah. And we went out to get the first engine, and the guy, before he built the engine, he wanted to know what size track we ran on and how many races we ran. Then he got that engine built, he told Larry, no, my mechanic, he said, it's got big valves in it. He said, you can't lug it coming off the turn. He said, gear it however you have to gear it to come off the turn, and don't worry about what it turns at the end of the straightaway.
Wow.
And he said, run it one season, run it the whole season, and bring it back and I'll freshen it. And we did. We ran 3 nights a week, and then the fair days. And we took it back, and sure enough, it was just right to freshen. And we turned it back then with a lot of RPM. It's not now, I suppose. But we turned it anywhere from 78 to usually 8,200 RPM.
That's a lot.
Pretty tight.
That's a
It's
lot.
pretty tight, Jerry says.
Yeah, that's fact.
They'll last longer.
First time we went to Denver
No.
and raced, we
I
were
don't remember about 7,500.
Oh, yeah.
we geared it just a little bit
Sounds
wrong,
like
and it
it.
was a 75 lap race, and we turned at 8,600 that night, finished third. Running against big blocks out there.
Oh,
Some of them
Yeah.
had big blocks, yeah.
All of them.
Hey, I'm curious, did you guys ever have any race day superstitions? You know, now a lot of them say, oh, I would eat chicken on race day.
Hey, I don't.
You don't?
No.
What? Any,
I'll eat it if it don't have a bone.
You can
If it's
talk
got bones,
about.
I won't eat it.
any superstitions though?
Did you ever get a green helmet, Jack?
oh, Jack.
No,
He's offered it.
I didn't want it.
You had there was a green wire in your car one time, wasn't there? And you made them change
That's where
it
his
before you raced.
superstition started,
There,
Yep.
I
back,
don't know where it started,
isn't it?
but
We put a green ribbon on his steering wheel one night, and he wouldn't get near the car until somebody took it off.
back in the late 60s and early 70s, there was called the Central Nebraska Racers Association, which was Hastings, Donovan, and Kearney. Donovan ran Saturday, Hastings Friday, Kearney on Sunday. And they had a set of rules that they went by, that association. And they had general rules. And 2 of the rules, honest to goodness, I got a yearbook that will prove it. It was illegal to run the number 13, and it was illegal to have a car painted green.
Really?
Yep, that was in the rules.
Uh,
when I was running sprint cars, there was a guy who was running for BCRA out of Colorado, and there was an old man, and he had a sprint car, and he painted it green and had number 13 on it. And the reason that he did was because he knew people wasn't going to come up and ask him if they could drive his car. He was just out there having fun. He'd stay out of people's way. That's the reason that he had it green and had 13 on it.
The Big Car Racing Association. They used to race at Belleville, so.
Mel, did you have any superstitions?
Yeah, not a very serious one, but wash the car before you ever go to races. Even if you just have to run water over the hood,
It had to be
had
washed.
to wash it.
Okay.
Bob and I remember one washing time with the car. We had went to Junction City and came home. We decided to wash the car before the next day. I think that was on Friday. We were going to go to Salina, so we wanted to wash it so we wouldn't have to do it the next day. When we backed the car out, the front end of the trailer come up, and we had one of those clamshell hitches that slide the collar forward. Somehow or another, we drove all the way to Junction City and all the way back with that clamshell open.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it didn't come
And
off.
it didn't come off? With the way you lose race cars, it didn't come off?
No, well, it was heavy in the front. That's the only thing that saved us.
Yep.
Came off right there at the car wash when it raised up, right there.
I don't have that kind of luck. Sam, what about you? You superstitious about anything?
No.
Nothing?
Well, I can't remember any.
You didn't care, huh?
No.
You just go race.
Well, where did the fried chicken thing come in? I mean, my ex-wife would eat fried chicken 7 days.
Did you ever read that book of racers' superstitions? I don't know where I got the book, but I had read it one time. Different superstitions that different drivers had and things that happened. This one fella didn't believe that. So while he was in the pits, he put chicken in, like a drumstick in 5 different cars. And he said he'd never do it again. Those 5 cars piled up. 2 of the guys got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
That was just one of the stories that really stood out.
Was that the fairground?
But green and 13 and all those things.
That's back at the fairgrounds, guys, isn't it?
Yeah.
got some old ones
That's when
going on
Flagman
there.
had death wish back then.
Yeah.
Well, I never did.
Jerry likes the trophy girl.
No,
Yeah. That was the best part, or
They
when
used to at the Hutch Nationals. I mean, the races started at 2, but they had a beauty contest throughout the week.
Yeah.
And at noon, the Corvette Club would bring all the gals who are in the beauty pageant out, and they parade around the racetrack and wave at everybody. You remember that?
Yeah.
That's quite a deal.
Yeah, Sam would remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact, well, that's a Corvair, but I guess that works. But
Thunderbird.
Now, Sam, these guys all got stories on you. Surely you got to remember something about one of these guys.
You know, I'll remember a bunch when I get home and lay in bed.
You should have told that one, huh? You know, looking at some of these old cars, Jack, you got an old Hudson that's becoming pretty famous. You want to tell us a little bit about your old Hudson?
Well, I always knew that what I was going to do when I retired from racing altogether. I wanted to get into old vehicles, old cars, and I wanted to. And I raced several Hudsons during the 25 years that I drove, and I met Tim Flock, and he drove a 1952 Hudson Hornet Coupe in 52, won the NASCAR championship in. And I told him that I wanted to build a Hudson replica of the car that he won the championship in 52. Asked him if I needed his permission to, and he said, well, I don't know if you do or not, but he said, if you do, you've got it. And he said, I want you to promise me you get that done. He was working at that time for Charlotte Motor Speedway, PR man. He said, I want you to promise me you'll bring it to Charlotte, and we'll have it in a pre-race parade. So we shook hands on it, And and didn't get it done, and he passed away before we got the car done. But we stayed in touch with his wife, and she was quite a bit younger than him. And in 2002, we took it down there and had it in a pre-race parade. And they had us line up and told me where to stop, and I stopped. And then they changed their mind, said, "We want you back farther." Said, "Just go ahead and drive around the track," and I did. So that was fun. I thought, what are they going to do? Black flag me? You know? And then they wanted it down there to have it in the NASCAR Hall of Fame Museum for 2 years. So I hated to let them have it, but I did. And then they wanted another year, so I let them have it. And then Tim Flock got inducted into that Hall of Fame, which they, as you know, induct 5 new ones each year. So then they wanted another year to put it in a special room to
Wow.
represent him for a year. So I finally got it back after they had it down there for 4 years.
Huh.
And they, every once in a while, somebody would call me up. Happened, probably 3 or 4 times a year, somebody called me up and said, "Hey, I was down at Charlotte and went to the NASCAR Hall of Fame down there, and said they got a Hudson in there just like yours." Yeah, I'll tell you how like mine it is. That is mine. And made me feel real good. They really liked it because and every once in a while I'd see on TV they'd be interviewing somebody and they'd have it in the background.
Mm-hmm.
So
They made some die-cast cars of that, because I had one at one time.
Yep. Yep. Dad just about owned Jeff Gordon's show car one year.
is that right?
Yeah.
And
When we went to Charlotte.
Yeah. Yep. Bob and I went to breakfast there on DuPont. They had the breakfast bar there, and we got our plates and went to sit down. And I put my plate on the table and pulled up a chair and sat down, and that chair throwed me right off on the floor. It broke. And then people came over there and picked me up and wanted to know if I wanted to go to the care center and want to know if I'd be all right, if they could do anything for me. And I said, "I'll just take that number 24 car." They said, "You don't need metal. You don't need any. You need mental help as well. You don't need medical. You need mental."
and I did get to take that Hudson around the racetrack at Kansas Speedway too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Huh?
But they had a pace car. You weren't supposed to pass the pace car, but I crowded him, but I didn't go around.
Imagine that.
Had a lot of fun with that.
I think me and Corey got to go around Kansas Speedway, didn't we, Corey? I think you got. Did you get a drive? I just was on a ride along. Man, they put you up against that wall, 300 mile an hour. You know, you think you're going.
Really?
Oh yeah.
It was a good time.
Oh yeah. It was like 130 mile an hour. You know.
I want to try that sometime.
Wow.
But you know, they just run right up against them. Oh.
Cool.
Definitely have a ton of stories to tell if we can just get them to talk.
Now, you guys didn't ask me about my racing career. You just talked about my announcing career, but I do actually have a racing career.
You do?
2 races come to mind. First off, I challenged the flagman one night to a bicycle race.
Okay.
1 lap around the racetrack. Now, you'd think a 3/8 mile racetrack would be easy to make 1 lap. But once you get to turn 2, you're done. That back stretch is a ½ mile long. It went that way. I actually, at one time, there was 4 of us went together. A guy out of Deputy, Nebraska had an old car, an old 6-cylinder, and he wanted $200 for us. So 4 of us kicked in, $50 a piece. And I announced the Speed Bowl at the time, so the other guys, but one of the guys kind of drove most of the time. We tried to take turns. Well, they wanted me to drive it one night, and Tom Lathan, who we just inducted in Nebraska Auto Racing Hall of Fame, by the way, this year, was my co-announcer. So he announced that I drove when I was the first heat race. And on the pole. I was excited, of course. We had such a low point average. You know, we started up front and the other guys started back. So they come around and everybody's standing up, and I'm excited because I'm thinking, man, you know, Tom's got everybody pumped up cheering for me while they were really playing the national anthem. So we took 2 more laps, took the green, and I put the pedal to the metal, and I thought I was going fast. And all 7 cars was out there besides me went by me. I was in last place by the second turn, and it overheated after about 3 laps, and I pulled in. So I actually had 3 laps in the race car in my career.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, that was a good time to quit. We sold it for $200, and we got our 50 bucks. Got my 50 bucks back. I was happy.
Mel, he's made a profit in racing right there.
Yeah.
That was the problem. I raced too long. I always thought I'd get it back. I do remember Ed Carr and I went to Hutchison, and we went to a showing of the new IMCA car and what it was going to be like, and we got the rules, and I looked at him, and that looked like a really neat thing. We're riding home, and Ed said, "Think we ought to build one of them?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Looked kind of neat. Don't look like it cost too much. Junk motors and everything, supposed to run." He said, "You know how much they're going to pay to win, to start with?" I said, "No, I don't. I didn't hear." They said, "Well, they're talking about 150 bucks.
Oh,
I throwed them out the window.
looky there. What do you think of that car, Mel?
Oh my goodness. That's the best car I ever had.
That looks like an outlaw car of some
That
kind.
is, I copied, what's his name from Enid, Oklahoma that drove that car, 07.
Buck Cadwell.
Buck Cadwell,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, whether you guys know this or remember this or not, you influenced a lot of the younger guys that are driving to these days to get involved in this sport.
Yeah.
You got a chance to talk me out of it.
Well, you kept calling me up and wanting to know how to do this and that. I told you the good and the bad.
I don't remember the bad.
Oh,
We've been having lately, this year especially, the Sport Compact at RPM has really grown this year. I mean, we've got a lot of new cars. We actually had 20 one night, which has got to be a record, I think. Several new faces, some girls, some younger kids, which is great because, you know, it's a cheap, inexpensive class for them, and they can get in there and
I think things that hurt auto racing to this day is not getting enough new people involved.
Yeah.
I think the internet hurts,
Yep.
and I think that we're losing too many tracks. I think you know, the big half miles that you guys used to run on are going to be a thing of the past sometime soon.
yeah, well, 3/8 tracks though are really, I'd prefer 3/8 mile track over any of them, anytime. So, and I think most guys would, wouldn't you?
No.
Jack liked to go fast.
One of my favorite tracks is Belleville.
Really?
Is it?
Yeah.
Well,
A lot
Mel,
of people say that.
I mean, Mel, what was one of your favorite tracks?
Basically Salina, but I loved Enid, Oklahoma.
Yeah,
Sure.
me too.
I done well down there. Yeah.
But Enid used to be a horse track, didn't it?
On the outside.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, outside.
Yeah, Enid was one of my favorite tracks
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
And
I done
Walkini was another track that was one of my favorites.
In the
Before they
beginning,
changed it.
right.
Before they changed
They
it.
ruined it later.
Before they ruined it, it was really,
Oh, yeah.
it was,
Osborne.
They had to make room for that horse barn at Waukene, that's why.
it was the Darlington, it was the Darlington of dirt tracks. I mean, narrow straightaways, long straightaways, and real tight, high bank turns. And just like Darlington, if you made a mistake there, you usually paid for it. That was one of my favorite tracks. It was really a good, fast track.
I
Well,
thought
what about you
Osborne
two?
was similar in the early years.
You two up front, Jerry. What do you got?
You know, I liked them all kind of, but Salina was kind of one of my favorites.
Where'd you-
Really liked going to that state line speedway, a little quarter mile, just a little dinky thing that, I mean, you turn in circles the whole time.
How about the little track down in Oklahoma that Sepulpa?
Yeah,
Good.
I did well there.
Yep.
I won clean swept there with a 6-cylinder.
Really?
Yeah, it was snowing, but
Is that
Yeah.
racing in the snow?
Sam?
Slide it.
Salina?
And Belleville.
Salina,
In Belleville? You like Belleville?
He won the championship.
Belleville
that
was
year,
fun.
and I was there.
when I didn't know any better.
And
You know,
I
when I didn't have no conscience of fear or anything, you know, it was fun. It
So
was
they
wide
said,
open.
be
Here
sure
we
to come
go.
back.
huh.
Never let off the gas. It was fast.
It's funny because I'm thinking of Norton because we get several cars in Nebraska at Norton, but you know, Kansas still has 5 active half-mile tracks left. There's not a half-mile track in Nebraska.
Yeah.
You know, there's 4/10ths and there's some thirds and
Yeah.
3/8 and quarters, but no half miles. And them guys really like running half miles.
Is that one, they call it near Donovan, is that one still open in Nebraska?
Mid Nebraska,
Mid-Nebraska, is it still
that
open?
is, I think, I haven't been by it in the last 3 or 4 months, but that's going to be either a anhydrous plant or somebody's gonna make a pasture out of it, or it's
It's done.
done. I mean, if
Really?
you went in to do it, you'd have to just start from the ground up because it deteriorated so fast. I mean, you know,
Really?
it's just like a house, you know, if it sits empty, it just deteriorates
Yeah.
faster. Racetrack, same way. The bleachers were at the end of when they had to run. You had to watch where you stepped to get through the bleachers, or you could take a tumble and just, the lights, it just wouldn't take, I mean, just wouldn't take care of the facility and just decided to close it. And that, I know there's a lot of controversy. It made headlines in Nebraska here a while back about what was gonna happen to
How long's it been closed?
it. 2 years anyway.
Oh, really? And it deteriorated that quickly?
2 to 3. Well, it was really deteriorating.
When they had it open?
But and maybe it's been a little longer than that. And it's too bad because it was just right off the interstate. They're in the middle of the state. You know, they used to draw cars and they were struggling. They couldn't get modified, so they dropped them off modified class. And
I announced up there once for an NCRA show.
Yeah,
and I liked it. I thought
I
it was
did
neat.
too. I mean, I filled in up there a time or two when they needed somebody, but it was a nice, I liked the track. I thought the track was great.
Jerry, I'm going to switch gears on you for a minute. I know this is our nostalgia show, but we've touched on it a couple of times, and we might as well talk about it now. Why are you running the V6 again?
I don't know. I just can't give up on it. Everybody says, "Oh, it ain't got enough power," and so I just try to keep building one that has a little more power. And finally, I got one to stay together. Now I can't get the car to turn.
So what block are you starting with?
Well, I had bought some bow tie blocks, which I can make a pretty good sized cubic inch with the stroke that I've got, but they were all dry sump motors. Well, I jerry rigged them to be a wet sump motor, and I could never get them to keep the crank in because it'd pump all the oil to the top, and I'd have crank problems. And finally, I blew up all that stuff. And I had the old Pee-wee motor, I called it. It run forever, run good, and the only time it would go was when it was super, super dry. If it was heavy, I was out to lunch, you know, in the heat race. And so this one here will run with it. I took the stroker crank and put in a stock block, so I just got a stock OEM block and put the stroker crank in it, and it makes a 298 cubic inch. And I put it on my computer dyno, and it makes 350 horse.
Really?
Yep. And but I'm thinking that I've taken so much weight off the front that it's rolling over and pinning the right rear too hard. And I've tried everything to keep it from doing that, but why don't you put a heavier spring in them? You know, so that's my next try to.
A little more spring.
I've changed so much stuff. I'm gonna put it all back to square one, and then just put a heavier spring in it and see if it'll keep it from getting over on the right rear. What it does, you go in the corner and set it and pick up the gas. As soon as you pick up the gas, the front end kind of wants to come up and go like this.
It shows the
like it
nose.
rolls over on the right rear and picks the front end up and won't want to turn. And when you go about 3 times, you know, trying to make a turn, everybody's
gone. Yep. And you know, Jerry's he's always trying something different. He showed up at the racetrack one night and had his bars all running backwards
Yeah.
rather than all going forwards. And what do you think of that? And, well, you ought to be fast coming off the trailer.
Yeah. And it worked once, and I thought, man, I won 2 features at the fairground. And I had to, back then we had to pan our bar across the back, you know, going the wrong way, you know, like an asphalt car. And I had it real low in the car. Well, guess what that car did? It wouldn't turn either when it was heavy because I had the power bar too low. Well, dummy me, I thought, oh, I have to be there. I won 2 races with it, you know?
Yep.
Well, I think all I had to do was raise it up and it would have worked. And finally I gave up and put everything back where it's supposed to be.
You know, the cars.
And that time that I had my J bar upside down.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
It was over.
Yeah. Oh, we got that there for.
Wanted to tighten our car up, so we put a stock sway bar across the front.
Oh, yeah.
That worked.
It did,
It's a
too.
drag racer. You just go straight ahead. That's all you can do.
All right, guys.
My very first car had a sway bar. on it.
Really.
All right, guys. There's a question for you up there on the monitor. Who were your favorite drivers to race against? Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was gonna say, when I was a little kid, my dad took me to races, and I seen Jack Petty running, and I said, "That's what I want to do. I want to be a race driver. I want to be like Jack Petty."
When you were a kid.
I was a little kid. I remember that really well.
Really?
See, the older guys influenced you, Sam.
I know. Think of the money. Think of the money he cost me. Remember that, Jack? You give me your autograph?
Yeah.
Thank you, Sonny. Here's your sucker.
Jerry?
Huh?
Well,
Who?
It'd be
Oh,
easier
yeah.
to say your least.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, then go with that.
Rawson.
Yeah.
John Ross. Whoop.
Well, there's 2 of you in agreement with
Take
that.
long to do it.
And
Wow.
Randy Wilson's dad.
Oh, he
He
was
was
a
always, he liked
was
to get
a-
under you and
he was a tough one.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I sharpened up my inside Nerf bar.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
And he got a flat tire next time he did that to me. I just smiled.
Jack, did you have anybody you liked to race against?
I like to race against anybody that drove clean. And
That is the most fun
really
time.
did. And didn't make any difference who it was. And I like to race against the top drivers, whoever they were, because it just
You can trust him.
yeah, you can usually trust them, you know. And
Now,
never did have any use for dirty driving.
now, clarify clean, because we were racing stock cars here, guys. Rubbin's racing.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
part.
rubber's racing.
When you gotta take a
that's
torch
right.
and a welder to
I'm
fix your
talking
car
about
afterwards,
taking you out
that's
on
not
purpose.
right.
Okay.
You know, that's I don't
I've
like.
been accused of it a lot, and so have you, doing it on purpose, but it's never, didn't really work that way.
Well, I'll tell you what I used to do. When they take me out on purpose, and I knew it was on purpose, I would go over and tell them, "You took me out on purpose." "No, I didn't. No, I didn't." I said, "Yeah, you did." And I said, "You got one coming, and it'll be at my convenience." And it might be 2 or 3 weeks later, but I would always keep my promise. I'm a man of my word. And I would always take them out
What's the
when
matter, Jerry?
it could be questionable whether it was on purpose or not, you know. The boy come over and just, you know, really mad, you know. And "You took me out on purpose." I said, "We're even now. From
Yep.
now on, I'll race you however you race me, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And that usually took care of it.
I've spent a whole week thinking about how I'm gonna get even with some guy. And then when you have your opportunity, you might as well just forget it because it's gonna cost you money if you do, probably. So I
No,
just
you
let
gotta
it
take
go.
them out
Let
when
it
you
go.
can, when you don't lose a position doing it.
Well, yeah. I wasn't that good at it.
Jack's a pretty good driver.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
You know you remember the flagman at Salt Hawk, Whiskers?
Oh, yeah.
Remember him? Yeah. He would a lot. I mean, that little track you could probably see a lot. And he would see everything that went on, and he could tell what went on, and he would always look the other way. I think on a lot of times on payback deals.
Remember that one night I said, Whiskers, didn't you see that? I said, you know that what he done.
Yep.
He said, the sun got in my eyes. He said, I tell you what, next week, if you want to get even, the sun will get in my eyes next week.
Yeah.
Jerry,
I won't tell you who it was.
do I got you on the spot?
Oh, maybe. You learn a lot at the racetrack sometimes.
Do you?
You do.
Oh, yeah.
Language especially.
Where to go and where not to go.
How about you talking about favorite racers to go against? Jerry has. Sam might have. I don't think Mel or Jack had a chance, but I know Salina's got, Ken Schrader coming back in
Yeah.
a couple of 3 weeks.
They do.
Again, and you've had him at Hayes 3 times, and Clint Boyer a couple times. Fun getting out there to race against those guys?
You know, them guys, you know, they're just out there to have a good time, I think. You know, they don't, I've never had, the only person I had really rub on me when I raced him was Kenny Wallace. Now, he was a little rough. but the other guys, they all usually drive real clean and give you room.
They
And,
can sure drive, can't they?
yep. You know, I think that driving that fast, and then when they get in
Yeah,
these cars, it's like,
getting in a go-kart.
you know,
Yeah.
it's just going slow.
Before we go, you guys have had some great sponsorships throughout the years. I know Jack having Dilson Ford on there. You want to say anything about any of your sponsors that you had?
Your dad's not going to be able to remember. That's not
Well,
fair.
I'll help him.
Yeah,
Okay.
Nelson Ford was a real good sponsor, and Heavy Hauling was another good sponsor. Burl Burt owned that, and I've had some good sponsors. And when my son Joe drove for me for 3 years, the late model sportsman, we had some good sponsors, and everybody knows that there were, sponsors are really, really necessary and help keep you going.
Yep.
I know Mel Potts, when he retired from driving stock cars and started driving go-karts, racing go-karts.
Yeah, that was fun.
I was down at his shop one time, and he was just getting started in these go-karts. And he said, Jack, he said, you ought to get in this go-kart racing. He said, it's a cheap way to go racing.
Yeah.
I said, Mel, the word cheap and racing do not belong in the same sentence.
He talked me into getting one.
It
Yeah.
wasn't too long after that.
Had a late model again.
He had to buy a motor, and he said, gee, you know what them things cost?
About $100 every time you turn around.
Yep.
That was fun though. That was really
Sponsors are really,
Yeah.
Mel?
they're just really, really necessary.
Lawrence Warda was a real good sponsor for several years. About the time Jerry was getting started, Lawrence was starting to sponsor me. Because he's the one that bought them tires that you bought.
Yeah, I think that's the first time we ever met.
Yep.
And,
They didn't last very long.
no, they sure did hook up though.
Yep.
That investment company of yours was was good at helping us.
What other
We even had a competitor that sponsored us for pretty good money from, I can't even remember his name. Or was he running a late model at that time?
I
Had
don't.
the jewelry store and the Napa store and
Oh, Mike Cooper.
Mike, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
He helped us some.
Yep.
Jim's Chicken always helped us every year.
Yep.
Had a big chicken right on the front of the.
Yeah. I don't know how that ever
My
worked
buddy
out.
always comes down and eats nuts before he goes to the races.
Really?
At Jim's Chicken.
Yep.
Didn't take it in the pit, so did he?
No. Maybe that's what's going on.
And Sam, Brittendall Motors has always been on your
Yeah.
car.
Yep.
Don't know
Miller
why.
Lite, then Coors Light. They was two good sponsors.
Bennett.
Ralph Bennett Pontiac.
Ralph
Yeah.
Bennett. Yep.
Sponsor.
Ralph is always a big help. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But Miller Lite and Coors Light was the main ones.
Jerry.
I've had some real good sponsors in the past too. Habco,
Oh,
That grain handling
Green
equipment.
Handling, or Millwright Company, Tim Buys, Scott's Well Service has been behind me for a long time, and they were very good. I heard these guys talking about Dennis King. He
Yeah.
just passed
Oh.
away.
Just passed
and-
away.
Oh, really?
And,
I didn't know that.
you know, he always talked about this Greg Sachs. His good friends with Greg Sachs. And his daughter told me about 2 weeks before he passed away, she drove him all the way to Florida and stayed at Greg Sachs' house, and they went through
Is that right?
old memorabilia and stuff,
Oh, wow.
and visited, and I think a week later he passed away.
Huh.
So he was a heck of a nice guy.
I
Huh.
had an individual give me $1,500
Okay.
to run races.
Mike, any final thoughts?
Oh,
And then
just
when I-
great to be here tonight, and listen to all these tall tales.
Thanks so much for driving down here. We really appreciate it. And thanks for what you've done for our sport, too.
Thanks.
So I
You
helped
know,
him.
being an announcer is kind of a thankless job sometimes.
Yeah, we're gonna racetracks this, no matter what position you have.
He was listed on it.
Gentlemen, before we wrap this up tonight, any final thoughts? Anything you want to say before we're done here tonight?
I really enjoyed it, and I always enjoy talking about racing.
You bet.
Yep.
And we just touched the tip of the iceberg tonight.
We did.
I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Good till later.
Until later.
Part two.
Part two?
Yeah,
I want to tell you about Kenny
R-rated.
Schrader.
We would have got to
Kenny
talk
Schrader,
more
gotta
if
tell you about
Brittendall hadn't
Okay.
talked
Now?
much.
Yep.
Now? How much time? Hurry up. Let's go.
Hurry up.
We're wrapping it up.
Kenny Schrader, when he drove the Red Baron car, we went to the airport, picked him up when my wife worked at Tony's.
Oh, yeah.
And we picked him up at the airport, and I had a yellow Corvette, I let him drive it, him and his wife. She wanted to know where the Kmart store was, so I let him use my car. And then I was telling Bobby, I was telling everybody, I let Kenny Schrader use my car. I told everybody that. And Kenny come to, where was he that time?
Hayes, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think. And I said, you ask him.
Yeah.
Bobby asked him, says, hey, you remember that picked you up there? Yeah, I remember that. He let you use his Corvette? I don't remember that. So when he come here last year, I confronted him. And he said, I don't remember that. I said, holy smoke. I said, I'm going to call your wife. And his pit memory and says, she's got the worst memory than he does. It's true, so it's true. And he don't remember.
Yep.
But
I
I'm
know you
going
don't
to test
remember.
him again when he gets here.
Should have got some pictures.
I know,
Yeah.
I know,
Pictures.
I'm sad.
Now you got a phone, don't you, that you can take pictures with?
Yeah.
There you go. That'll fix it. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Bob's family again, and of course Karen for bringing food for us tonight, and of course Salina Access, DJ Mean Dean, Salina Speedway, of course Baum Construction. Bobby, great job as usual. Thanks, folks, for everybody for coming out. Good night. Thank you guys so much for coming down. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.